So I wanted to end the year, as I've just mentioned, really kind of giving you guys an overview of what we've been talking about in the Creating Health series of what causes MS and how to heal it. And the title of the presentation is going to give you guys a hint. So just pay attention, because at the very end of this presentation we're going to do a little test. We're actually going to resolve the greatest mysteries and questions researchers have been asking about MS. All right, so to start, first off, I want to contrast what is MS with what is other diseases that we're so used to dealing with, because the most common diseases we were dealing with in the 19th centuries, our parents and our grandparents and us as kids, were infectious diseases, right? Pneumonia, influenza, tuberculosis. What happened there? We were healthy, we got an infection, we were sick, and in the 1930s, and very popular since the 1940s onwards, they found a solution that all you needed to do was inject yourself or take a pill and you become healthy again. The thing is, we've been doing this for about 80 years to the point that anytime you feel something, you want someone to give you a pill and an injection to feel better and become healthy again. That's it. We're just used to this. This has become a pattern. The thing is, the diseases of today, including MS, aren't like that. They're not infectious, right? The main causes of death and the main concerns of healthcare right now are heart disease, cancers, lung disease, strokes, and one that's becoming more and more prevalent is the autoimmune disorders, right? Autoimmune diseases. They're not infectious. What are they? These, you'll hear them called chronic disease, including MS, also technically are called the biopsychosocial diseases and functional diseases. These have a different pattern. So in this case, you're healthy. So think about this. MS actually didn't just happen last year, okay? Think about this. You're born as a healthy child for most of us, right? Genes actually contribute to about 2 to 5% of what's happening in the body. Though there needs to be triggers, both biological, psychological, and social triggers for something to manifest in the body, even if you have the gene. So as a child, what's happening? And these are the things we've talked about in Creating Health, so you can review them in a lot of detail in this series. We all have adverse childhood experiences, things that happen, neglect, peer pressure. Some people have much more major experiences like abuse or witnessing abuse, violence, mental health of someone in the family, insecure attachment styles, all these things which have been termed ACE. So we have all these psychosocial elements, and we have included, of course, our American diet, which lacks nutrition, is full of toxins, etc., and all of the toxins that we accumulate, right? Foods, medication, chemicals, heavy metals, molds, all of this we've also talked about in the Creating Health. So as a child, you have all this load in the system. The thing about this is then as you're growing up, you continue to eat the same, right? You've learned a certain way, you tend to do it. You tend to still take the same stuff, use the same medications, the same lotions, etc. And at the same time, what is happening is, because of those experiences as a child, we start believing certain things about life and about ourselves. And so it's not so much this, it's what it makes us perceive about life. If we are neglected, unless we have A+, we think, I have to be perfect in order to be loved, right? I have to be an overachiever. That's when mom and dad sees me. That's when I'm being seen at school, etc. And so we learn ways of coping with life. But those ways of coping with life, which are not your personality. Being a perfectionist, you might have been doing it most of your life. It is not your personality. You're not born that way. Being an over-controller is not your personality. You're not born that way. Why am I saying this? because you can change it. And by changing these, you reduce the load in the body, and we'll get into that as well. So what's happening? So all of this stuff is happening. You have your own internal pressures because you have to be a certain way. It has to be like this. You need to have planning. You need to do it perfect. You can't fail. You're avoiding it. All this stuff is accumulating. And then you have a stressor, right? And a stressor could be anything. It could be in a divorce. It could be in a child, you just have a newborn. It can be work. Many times with my clients, the major stressor right before the onset was they felt threatened that they were going to lose their job. And they were all about their job. A death of a loved one. And they're trying to pretend that everything's okay. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It's not fine, right? And so all these things accumulate and cause the MS. Now, did I invent this? No. There's actually tons of studies, especially with MS. MS is an amazing example. You can find a lot of research which talks about the psychosocial factors or biopsychosocial factors. So I kind of went fast. There's a lot of studies which conclude that these factors are closely associated with the onset, and they'll play, may play a very important role in the development. How far does your MS go isn't determined by, I hope my MS. No, there is actually a correlation. Another one, the common characteristic of the onset, that stressor is actually so much is starting to go on, so much is going on, so much is going on, that you begin to feel, I can't deal with this. I can't cope with this. I've pretended for so long. I've been the strong one for so long. I can't. That has been one of the common characteristics right before the onset. As well, another study, a research paper about stress. I had a client last week. She's new, and she was like, my doctor says, there's a lot of issues of stress. It's just normal stress. I was like, it's your normal stress. And your normal stress is pretty big because there's a lot of internal standards, very high standards. And so we slowly walked her through the different examples, and she's like, oh, yeah, there was a lot of major relationship difficulties that rather than dealing with them, especially even family, mom, requirements, just kind of trying to put it aside until it just becomes too much. And because of these, patients burdened with qualitatively extreme stress, such as the relationships or financial insecurity. One of the women in the study, she had always been the best at selling properties. Well, it's 2008, there's an economic downturn, and she still wants to be the best. She still wants to sell even more properties than last year. There's an economic downturn. It's probably not possible, but she wanted to try. And her body said, okay. Now, I kind of referred to this already. It's not what happens. I have clients that have one little symptom, and their life, their childhood is terrible. It's not what happens. It's how we respond, what we've concluded, what we decided life is about, or how I have to show up in life. Those are the parts that need updating. Those are the parts that you can change. Just good. It's like, to think, I'm going to have to be sick because since I had my parents divorced and my dad was, alcoholic. Not necessarily. But you need to review how you're responding to life. So, when you think about, what are my psychosocial factors? What are those beliefs I have, right? Well, this is actually a collection of all the ones I've found, both in the research I've done and with my clients. Now, this is a lot, but I've grouped them, and you can download this on the webpage. I've grouped them into these categories. These are the main issues that are happening with MS. A big one, very self-critical, major judgment. There's very high standards inside going, you should have done that. You should be a better. You should, speak out more. You should, And there's constantly an internal self-hammering, right? Another, numbing emotions. I shouldn't feel that, or I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just, you know, I know how to cope. I just turn that off. I just pretend, or I ignore, pretend nothing happened. Another one, externally identified. What does that mean? What you do in the world, how you look out there, determines how successful you are. So if you lose your job, you feel like, who am I? One of my clients was bedridden, yet she had a lovely family that was always coming to see her, and she was like, I have no worth, I'm a sack of potatoes. Because I can't do anything for them, physically, I have no worth. And I said, that's your path. You're going to have to find your worth. And that's what MS is doing for you. It doesn't let you be externally identified anymore. It doesn't let you define who you are by how great of a cook, of a worker, of a mom, of a helper you are out there. Who are you? What is your worth as a human being? A lot of internal conflicts. Now think about these. The major issue with MS is immune system. The immune system is the seat of your personality. It's defending you from what is not you. Well, there's a part of you that wants to be a great mom, and there's a part of you that wants to be a great professional, and they're in butts all the time, right? Because when you're being a mom and not paying attention or not getting that email, you're like, oh, I should be calling so-and-so to make sure that was done. And then when you're at work, you're like, oh, I should be at my kid's soccer game, right? There's a lot of these. And so your immune system is butting up against your immune system. There's a lot of unbalanced interpersonal relationships, family system, right? Those areas. I'm not allowed to tell them I need help. I'm not allowed to tell them I'm scared, or a lot of things with parents, right? Well, we don't resolve in childhood. We need to learn as adults. Another biggie for MS, totally not anyone's fault, well, social fault, is that social expectations around MS, right? No one tells you, hey, 2% of people with MS reverse their MS without any changes, and 20% if they do da-da-da, they reverse their MS. No, they say, oh, you'll probably end up in a wheelchair in 10 years. Even though the probability of that might be whatever it is, 7%. There they go, right? They give you the worst prognosis. That, when you feel helpless, hopeless, or there's no exit, how healthy is that, right? That actually makes you spin outwards more, right? I just want to die. Well, imagine your body, how your body responds to, I just might as well die, this is a death sentence. That also contributes. Being very disconnected from the body. Oh yeah, I felt that, but that wasn't important. Those are, your body's communicating, right? When you growl, when the stomach growls, should you ignore it? It's probably trying to tell you something, right? Every single symptom is trying to tell you something. And compromise personal boundaries. Ability to say no. Ability to say, hey, I'm having a good mood. If you're not having a good mood, I'm sorry, but I can still have a good mood. I don't have to make you happy. I don't have to be unhappy just because you're unhappy. And I don't have to do that for you. Right? These are some of those patterns. These are the main groups. And again, I'm just kind of like throwing this out just to give you guys an overview of what's going on and what's causing it. So, all those things we just talked about, these are values of modern society. Modern society, even as a kid, right? What are you going to do when you grow up? I'm going to be a great me. No, I'm going to be a fireman. I'm going to be this, Our worth is defined by what we do. As soon as you meet someone, hi, my name is, what do you do? And I'm no one says, hey, I'm a happy person. I'm joyful. How about you? No. You've got to put your curriculum down, right? Your resume. We're constantly striving for perfection, right? And being the best. In school, very competitive, right? For example, I saw this the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder. I saw on Facebook a video which compared Olympic gymnasts of like the 1950s and 60s and Olympic gymnasts now. Olympic gymnasts in the 50s, like, cartwheel, looking good. Now it's like, I was like, holy cow, you know, our kids see that. What are they going to try to do? They want to be better than this superwoman thing that was created because she worked 13 hours a day to become this gymnast in 2017. And we keep striving for that. That's what we see. That's what YouTube is full of, and the news is full of. And so ourselves and our kids are trying to be that. I have to be the best in something. And hard work is valued, right? This comes from our parents and grandparents, and it continues to be seen here. Hey, how was your day? Oh, I had so much to do. Yeah. What if you said, oh, I saw the cat in the sun, and so I just crawled up next to her and said, that sounds like a good idea. They'll look at you like, yeah, okay. Right? That's not valued. Success is defined monetarily and by others. Right? I tell someone what I do, they go, does that make good money? No. Oh. Right? And we have to be, and this is a big one, we're taught to be completely independent and self-reliant. I don't need help. I can do it. I don't need a husband. I don't need anybody. I can completely do this. I can deal with it. Even if I'm driving, I can do. Don't help me, right? I can do it. And all the biological factors of modern society as well, right? The diet, the overprocessed foods, toxins. This is my area. That's why. All right. So those are the causes, but now, how do we heal from it, right? Big one. Start asking yourself some questions. Update your values. Modern society values are not healthy. There's 50 million people with autoimmune disorders in the US. Modern society values are not healthy. Ask yourself who and what defines your worth. Think about you as a child. Okay, children are worthy too. Each one of them is an individual little character, right? They are worthy, not because later they become this or that, or the helpers or the engineers, etc. What defines your worth? What about failure do you really fear? And our school system is like, oh, I have to not fail. But in real life, masters are the ones who fail the most, right? My clients was talking about baseball the other day. Of course, it went right over my head, but it was something about, you have to hit 1,000 hits to get so many home runs, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's it, right? And ask yourself, is perfection the ultimate goal of life? Or is it community? Or is it connection? Ask yourself, what is your quality of life? How balanced is your work and playtime? Define rest and relaxation. I haven't worked with a single person with MS who's not allergic to the word lazy. It's like a bad word. It's like, oh, lazy. Never lazy. Who has defined your success? Again, this isn't a personality trait. And what would your definition be? What is success? Laughing every day? Smiling every day? Connecting every day? Or finishing and completing all those emails and answering all those phone calls and making sure the house looks all organized? What defines success? And this is a big one, especially for a modern society. What can you learn from interdependence versus independence? We are creatures of community. And our modern society has made it really easy to isolate. We depend on no one but ourselves and our computers. Just to get not answering. Okay, you have to physically. I can cut this out.
It just means matter's changed.
Probably does. And I thought about this morning, and I ignored my intuition.
We're not requiring perfection.
There you go.
I know I should do it, but I ignore it completely.
I ignored it. See, that's a big issue. So what is the journey to health? Change the mindset. Health is not about getting rid of disease and hoping someone will inject you and it'll all go away. Okay? Health is about the ability to respond to the challenges of life. Of course things are going to complicate. Of course I'm going to run out of my battery. Of course whatever, but you need to be able to navigate. Okay? So these are those areas that I pointed out. What are the journeys in those areas? Self-knowledge, knowing yourself, listening to yourself, listening when yourself says, hey, you might want to grab a red battery. But it says other things as well, right? It says, hey, that's not a good person for you. Acceptance and love, changing the internal voice. So it's not that judge that's beating you, it's actually a kind mentor that's like, hey, you should change your battery. Being emotionally expressive. Emotions are also another area of communication. Just like when your stomach growls, it's telling you, hey, work through this emotion. Don't shove it under the carpet. Internally identified. What is your value? Of course there's going to be people who don't like what you do or think you're terrible. Gandhi was, killed. So was Martin Luther King. There's always people that don't agree with you, no matter what an amazing person you are. Learn to be internally and externally congruent. So you're the one with the blue hair. It identifies you. So you're the one with the blue hair. Whoever you are inside, let that out. Work on evolving beyond the original family system. Have goals. MS does not define your future. MS is going to accompany you for a good while. But define goals, define a future you're looking for, something to strive for, something to move towards. Have healthy personal boundaries. Knowing to say no, knowing to say, hey, maybe someone else needs to do this holiday party thing this year. I don't need to do it all, or I'll put the table. That's it. Okay? And having a good relationship with your body. If your body says brain fog, it means you put too much on the table. It wants you to take stuff off. Listen. And healthy personal relationships. If someone's constantly getting you down, maybe that someone's not the person that needs to be in your life. So looking at those psychosocial that we reviewed before, this would be that path. This would be that journey. From getting MS, working on detoxing, working on the nutritions, right? And supplements, and working on all of those psychosocial factors so that when there's a stressor, because that's life, right? It's fine. One of my clients, she's been with me now for a while. Now she's only with me like once a month. But I remember, I think it was like 7 months in, major stressor. She texts me, all symptoms are on. I call her, and of course all this stuff was going on. She wanted to be the perfect bridesmaid, and she was going to help and do everything so the bride doesn't have to think of, figure out anything. She hadn't slept, she hadn't eaten in 3 days, of course. And then, of course, there was a little hiccup in the morning of the wedding. All her symptoms were up, right? But like a little bit, maybe 4 or 5 months later, she texts me and she goes, wow. She goes, I had the worst weekend of my life. The worst. Everything that could have happened. I was like, oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. Because the symptoms didn't come on. because she was dealing with it, because her body wasn't overloaded. So when those things do happen, you can deal with them. So it's all about change. Okay? There isn't a pill, there isn't a hypnosis recording. I get people asking me, hey, do you have a recording I could use? Yeah, I have one, but you're going to have to do quite a bit of other stuff, right? It's about change, making changes, real changes. Changes in behaviors, how you cope and express emotions, thinking.
I'm trying. I'm hitting the thing. It's frozen. Hold on.
Because sometimes
It's
I'll
about
have clients that come into the session, and we've done we've done some work, and I always leave them 2 weeks between each session. And they come back and they're like, okay, so what are we going to work on today? And I was like, so what was the last 2 weeks? And they're like, I don't know, I listened to my recordings. Okay, what changes? What have you noticed? What have you put into place? What conversations have you had? There's changes to be made, right? It's not just showing up to sessions or to your practitioners. So how to make these changes? First, realize something. It took a while to develop. It's not going to happen in a summer, or I'm going to take a month off work and deal with my MS. It's a process. So know that it's going to take some time. Set some realistic goals. Okay? Palmer in the previous sessions of the series gave us tons of material on how to detox and raise your nutritional, et cetera, et cetera. Be realistic. I'm going to, focus on this piece right now, and I'm going to focus on this piece. Take small steps. Overloading your body with, I should be doing this, is an additional stressor. Acknowledge successes, even the little ones. Hey, I didn't have any cookies today. Kudos. Always plan for setbacks. I used to do engineering, architectural work, and we always put 20% of tolerance, which means if we calculated it would take us 6 months, we would add 7.5 months, right? Always plan for taking extra time, for all the complications, for things you didn't think. It's the first time you're doing this. You're not an expert. You're figuring it out on the way, so plan for these setbacks. Practice acceptance. Well, that didn't work. And problem solve.
Sorry.
Oh.
I got excited.
Sure, you're happy.
And this is, what this is for too, right? Set up a supportive environment in the community. Don't do this independently. That's part of the issue. Get some support. It's just like going to the gym. So much funner, so much easier if you do it with someone else. Okay, so set that up. And I think it's much more motivating if you connect to values. I'm doing this to teach my kids. I'm doing this because we should all love ourselves. I'm doing this because I don't want the next generations to keep living in the modern society. It's not healthy. Okay? Know this. You guys are the mavericks. You guys are the ones who are going to change and show that the values of modern society don't work. All right. So, let's see if we can solve, using that perspective we just talked about, the psychosocial factors, some of the greatest mysteries, I'm going to leave this here, that researchers have about MS. Here we go. Why do you think that there's twice as many women as men who get MS?
Stress. More
I was
stress.
going to say they're asked a lot more because of the parent, their caregivers. They're caregivers.
Yep. Got a lot of internal conflicts. They're supposed to be this and they're supposed to be that, and if I don't do it, and I'm going to ignore my needs, right? I go visit my sister with her kids, and I'm like, have you eaten today? I have to do it, They ignore their needs, right? Men are like, work, produce income, come home, change the diaper, maybe. I'm exaggerating, right? But there is a lot. The modern society has pulled in the woman into the workforce, but they haven't taken away any of the other requirements, right? The other requirements were a full-time job, so there's now 2 full-time jobs. And of course, they're competitive, so they want to be better than or as good and show that they too can dedicate themselves to work and everything else they have going on. Okay, number 2. Why are there more cases of MS, far more cases, in industrial countries such as Northern Europe and North America, and not in countries such as Brazil and Ecuador?
Oh, that's right, we talked about that.
Crappy industrial.
They know how to let go and
That's
have
part.
fun.
Toxins.
Yes.
They're more relaxed.
Yes. Are they defined by their profession? Do you think a Brazilian is defined by his profession? I think they have, what, a whole month of carnival? Right? I mentioned this in the last one. There's a saying in Brazil, when they see someone working very hard, they look at them and say, why are you trying to figure it all out in this lifetime? You have plenty of lifetimes to figure that out. Don't work so hard. Come relax. Relax is a good thing. So there's all these theories about the Ecuador, and it's closer to the sun, and there's a big cultural issue here too. Now, let's make it more complicated, the same question. And they can't figure this one out either. Why do you still have the same probability of getting MS if you're born in Brazil but moved to Germany as a child? If you're born in Brazil, but then you move to Germany,
Nature versus nurture.
because all of this isn't a personality issue. This is coping strategies. You got into the industrial, you got into the school system, into doing it perfect, getting the perfect grade, doing it right, fearing failure. Why does the onset of MS occur between the ages of 20 and 40?
Because that's when you have to,
When
you
figure
have to
it
be
out.
an adult.
Exactly. That's when you have to be an adult. You have to be successful. You have to show up in the world. You have to be a certain way. They've told you this is what success is, and you're out there trying to do it, and you're just beating yourself up because you can't do it. Good job. In 15 minutes, you have understood some of the greatest mysteries of MS.